Biggie, like Tupac, like Michael Jackson, like Nelly, like Bruce Springsteen, has sold a portion of his music catalog for upwards of $100 million. Oh, they cashed out. May Miss Valletta Wallace rest in peace. Does Puffy get some of this money? Let's get into some of this straight game.
Blackjack. Life is like those cards. It's not what you dealt, but how you play it. Play each situation correctly. I remember they used to laugh at a brother.
Welcome back, guys. Welcome back. It's your boy DELRAY, Richardson, platinum artist, platinum songwriter, Straight Game TV. Thank you for tuning in. I appreciate your time. Do me a favor. Click on what appears to be the little bell notification right below this video. I'm going to get right into it. Ladies and gentlemen, the notorious B.I.G.'s estate has sold a portion of his catalog for upwards of $100 million. A few years back, Afeni Shakur did a deal with Evergreen Music. Biggie's situation was done through Primary Wave, which is a publishing company. Most artists don't really understand like how valuable, your publishing is. But yeah, they just cashed out. The notorious B.I.G.'s estate has sold a significant share of Biggie's of the rapper's catalog to Primary Wave, a music publishing company which already owns the rights to many significant acts, including stakes in the catalogs of Kurt Cobain, John Lennon, and Prince. This is a big deal. The company confirmed the deal with Biggie's estate on Thursday, but has not provided any financial details. However, previous reports by The Hollywood Reporter suggested that the rapper's publishing rights would be worth as much as 100 million, 92 million pounds, with a further 50 million or 46.1 million pounds potentially on the cards for the master rights. And so very important, because most people don't understand like the publishing rights versus the writers. So that's the writers publishing, the person who writes the song, as well as the publishing share of the writer's side of the song. A lot of people in the music industry, this is why you hear like artists getting jerked for their publishing. You hear about somebody like, oh man, they got cheated and they did this deal and they did this bad deal. In Biggie's situation in particular, Puffy owned a piece of Biggie's publishing. That was one of the big things that had happened, and why a lot of the artists were mad at Puffy from that perspective in dealing with him and Bad Boy. And if you remember, just before all of this stuff began to happen with Puffy, he had gave some of the artists, I believe the Locks, I think him and Mace did a deal, and Faith Evans and a few other artists received their publishing rights back. And so Biggie, like I said, Biggie's family, they cashed out. They cashed out. What do you guys think? You think that was a good move or a bad move when you think about the big picture in regards to, taking that lump sum of money? I don't know what the intricacies of the contract is, because sometimes there are reversion clauses after a certain amount of time, and sometimes it's an outright sale. What this appears to be, it's an outright sale. It said the notorious B.I.G.'s estate has sold a significant share of the publishing. Usually sometimes you would do a publishing deal with a company if you from that perspective. It says sources have said that the estate has sold 50% of both these rights to Primary Wave, as well as his name and likeness. So Biggie's name, his pictures, and all of that are no longer owned by his family, no longer owned by the estate. This gives Primary Wave a controlling share of Biggie's catalog, which they can use for licensing songs to films and TV series, as well as other branding opportunities through the rights over his names and likeness. Valletta Wallace, Biggie's late mom, the rapper's mother, reportedly made the deal with the company before her death in late February. So Biggie's mom basically cashed out. She cashed out before she died. I think this probably will benefit CJ and Biggie's daughter, Tiana. One of the most influential figures in East Coast rap scene, Biggie's first album, Ready to Die, 1994, is considered a classic of the genre. True facts. I remember going to buy Method Man's album first, and then when I heard Biggie album, I took Method Man album back. I ain't gonna lie, and I got Biggie's album. But Method Man album was tight, but he had like a couple of songs. But Biggie's whole album was like, it's definitely a classic album. Christopher Wallace, we know, murdered 1997, and at the age just 24. Pac was murdered. He was 25. And so, like I said, what do you guys think about this? I think it's a brilliant move, especially if they're gonna do something with the money. You know what I mean? Like trust the money up. You know what I mean? Future generations for Biggie's family. Whether Tiana has kids or CJ has kids or whoever is included in the estate. You know, Biggie still has an estate, but now this portion of his catalog has been sold. What I think is most interesting about this is Biggie only put out 2 albums. I mean, let's be clear. I mean, he did, you know, it was the other album that came out, Born Again, right? But Biggie only put out 2 albums. That's a hell of a price, basically, for 2 albums. That's a hell of a price. That just goes to show you the price of hip hop and what it's really, truly, honestly worth when you break this situation down. So a lot of people, like I said, if you out here writing songs or you have music and things like that, really, truly understand what it's worth. And because evidently Miss Wallace understood what it was worth. And she made the deal. They had talked about the deal not too long ago, a few weeks back, if you will, and it was in the works. So I guess, you know, it was finalized, they say, by Miss Wallace before she passed away. And I think overall it was a good deal, because I mean, if she, you know, she probably knew that she didn't have long, you know, and so she probably felt like, you know, this would be the best situation, and so that they wouldn't have to worry about the administration and all of the other, you know, things that go along with trying to administer, you know, the songs when you do licenses, when you do, you know, certain kind of deals and licenses for the name and likeness and all of those things. And so, like I said, I think this was a good deal, man. Tupac, his catalog, I believe when they sold a portion of his, I think his went for like 80 million. Tupac's thing was it went earlier, before all of these other big deals were done from that perspective. But I believe that Tupac's deal involved a reversion clause. I think after a certain many years, I don't think they sold it. They did a licensing deal with Tupac's situation, if I'm not mistaken. I remember when that deal was done. Evergreen was the company that did the deal with Tupac. And so, yeah, this is interesting. I think Nelly got something like 50 million. Michael Jackson, his catalog just went back to Sony for like 600 million. So yeah, for Biggie having 2 albums, man, I think this is very, very interesting. 2 albums. But like I said, that Life After Death album is a pure hip hop classic, man. I don't think, like I said, that body of work, when you think about that, as well as Tupac's All Eyes on Me, and also Me Against the World. Those albums, like I said, once again. So we'll see what happens. Like I said, if anything happens in regards to the Tupac estate, and them probably trying to do some kind of deal with his entire catalog, if they want to. But I think Pac estates brings him probably like $7-8 million a year. You know what I mean? Which ain't bad. You know what I mean? From that perspective, you know, when you think about music and the longevity of it, you know, and you think about what Primary Wave just did. So if you give up $100 million, in the lifetime, if you start working the catalog, in 10 years, 15 years, you can have that money back depending on how you work the catalog. And so, like I say, all of the radio play, this goes in the radio play licenses, likeness, name, movies, you know what I mean, and so on and so forth. So I think it was a good deal. May Miss Wallace, may she rest in peace. And like I said, your boy DELRAY, straight gang.